Hey everybody, the 52 is back. Coming up next. That is right, we are back with the 52. It has been way too long, mainly because our driveway has been a bobsled track, and trying to get anything up to the house that's not all-wheel drive or assisted by the Bobcat, well, if you've seen the Challenger video, is sort of a challenge. So, we're back now, and it may look a little different than last time you saw it. Let's take a look back in time. And that brings us to present time Tim, present time 52. Now we are working on three main areas today before I get ready to block this whole thing out. One, it's going to be a dent down here in the rear. Two, we've got another dent over here, the little crease or crinkle by the hood latch. Looks like something hit it and just sort of kinked it in a little bit. On the third, we've got a similar dent over on the passenger side, much like this. So who knows? There's a few other things around here I want to touch up. There's a little skim that needs to go on the passenger side, rear quarter. But otherwise, we're going to be ready to block it out and shoot some color on here. One of the things I can do, and I might do yet, is take our sample can of paint we've had mixed and shoot the interior. I'm 99.987% sure that is the color that I want to use after probably 7 or 8 iterations. And if I can get the inside of the car based and cleared, I need more clear supplies, I think. Mental note. We can get that done and come back and start working on the rest of the car once we get a big old jug of paint. Now, we're thinking all the material, 1 gallon of paint, 2 gallons of paint. My thought, if I bought 2 gallons, just to make sure I have enough, is buy 2 gallons, get a third empty can, split them both into that spare tank, and then split the other 2 half cans into one of the other original can. Shake everything up so if there's any deviations between the 2 gallons made, because they are mixed by hand, that'd give me the least possibility for having a difference in shade if I'm going between 2 different parts of the car, doors or hood versus body, whatever. Let me know your thoughts on that, because I'd like to know your experience if you've got multiple gallons or quarts or whatever the case may be, making sure that that mix is spot on between both containers, especially when you're getting it mixed by hand on a scale. Alrighty, so before I go ahead and slap some mud on here, I'm going to try and massage these dents out. They are hidden back here, so it's going to be kind of a block of wood and a dead blow hammer to try and knock them out. But let's see what I can do. All right, this one's gonna be pretty good. I'm gonna have to put a little bit of a skim over it, but we are right on the inside of this corner. I can't get to it very easily. I'm wrong-handed. And I do have the seam right here. So we're gonna leave this one as is and move around, check out the middle place here behind the trunk, which is gonna be kind of challenging to get to. So this here, I know I'm gonna need a little bit of skim when it's all said and done. I'm okay with that. But we have this crease right down here, and it doesn't really come out here. It's just this whole area here, this side is kind of caved in. The downside is the trunk latch is back here and does not easily come out. So I'm going to figure out how to make this work. If I try and pull it with my stud gun on this line, it's just going to end up sort of rippling, and that I don't think is going to be our ideal outcome. So I'm going to try and get a rod back here and see if I can push any of it out, and we'll start there. So we're going to start with the absolute wrong tools for the job: a drift pin and a pry bar. Why? Because I don't have PDR rods, and even if I did, I think this material may be a little strong for them. So we'll see what we end up coming out with. Well, that isn't going to work, so I guess stud gun it is. I'm going to get that stuff out. Alright, I've got this area ground off. Had to find my bag of studs. One of my lights fell over, broke, so improvising. Let's just put a few of these studs in. Really? This should not be this difficult. All right. Alrighty, now try and find my hammer and keep working on that. See if we can pull it out. So what I'm doing here is pulling these studs out little by little, trying to work my way down the line. And you know, if one pops off along the way, so be it. My main goal is I just want to try and pull everything out evenly. Now some folks will say work from the outside of a dent in. This dent isn't very large. Some folks would say start in the middle and work your way out along that crease. I just work down the line and kind of bring everything in as even as I could. I've got a little left here to hammer out, and I'm still having lighting problems, so I'll come back. Alrighty, well, we've got some mud mixed up. I'm gonna go ahead and work on these three areas back here quickly, and We just have to let it dry, and we'll come back when we can do some sanding. Now, I did go ahead and clean off the space before I'm putting any goo on it. That's a given. Just hit it with a little bit of spray away and a rag, and there you go. And I'm not going to try and make this thing museum perfect because, well, I'm going to come back and sand anyways. But just kind of work on a couple of areas of concern. Go. Oh, run through here. This is going to be a little thicker and uglier, but not too bad overall. There's some emblem that goes in there. I have it somewhere. So we'll just have to recreate those holes when we're all said and done. There should be one here. Where was it? There's one. And there's one. We'll let that dry. Not a whole lot to see from your side. This corner was much like the driver's side, so we're going ahead and just filling in some of those imperfections left from a little bit of metal beating. And there's a few spots down here I didn't even try and hit with the hammer because I'm not going to get to them. And I don't feel like crawling around under the car to see if I can. No, it's right on the trunk pan. So there's no way I was going to get that out easily. Anyways, we'll come back when this is dry, do some sanding, a little more filling, a little bit of glaze, and be ready for, well, I guess blocking the rest of the car. Alrighty, we are waiting for our filler to dry, and I figured why not waste time and get into the block sanding. And I'm gonna go over just a little bit. We've done sanding quite in depth in other videos. You can check those out. Mostly on the 52 here in the Challenger projects, but basically just gonna go ahead and block sand the whole thing. We did go ahead and apply a light coat of guide coat over the vehicle, so once we get all that black paint gone, we are pretty much good to go. And of course, if you see it wear through any areas, that means you need a little more. Maybe it's a high spot, depending on how it looks, or if you've got areas where you've sanded through to the paint or the bare metal and you've still got primer, that would be a recess. You need to come back and spot in. I've got one, I think, over on the passenger side, but by and large, the rest of the car is pretty straight, except for the few areas that we've worked some metal here with either patch panels or dent pulling. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit of sanding done here. You can see the process. And then we'll do more sanding off camera, of course. Now, before I get into it, I do have the soft sanders. I've got linear sanding blocks over there too, and those, the sizes that I have, are gonna be very good for larger areas up here on the roof or my hood, or areas where I don't have a lot of contour. These soft sanders curve pretty easily. I've got 3 or 4 different stiffnesses of them for working in these contours, rounds, whatever. But this allows me to, as I'm sanding, not have a rigid board, but kind of flexes. You can see up here, it'll flex a bit with the contour of the panel I'm working. So very helpful to have. You can hand sand it if you don't have any tools like this. Maybe use a Scotch-Brite pad, but not Scotch-Brite, a kitchen scrubby, one of those blue or green things. But those aren't very large, so you're not going to be working a larger area, you know, at the same time. So you may end up with kind of cratering out some areas if you work too much in one spot. So that's why these are the longer tools. There's various types. There's soft sanders, linear sanding blocks, Durablocks, whatever the case may be. Plenty of options to choose from. I think these are in my Amazon store. Anyways, back to it. We're gonna hit a light pressure. I'm not wrenching into it, not leaning into it. Light pressure, hold that contour, and then work an X pattern to try and make sure I'm not just sanding everything in one direction, which will get grooves. And especially if you're doing something with pearls or metallics, those little particles will sit down in those grooves and you're gonna have a bad paint day. So when possible, try and work in an X pattern. Not swirlies, but an X to try and get as much of a consistent pattern of sanding across the car as you can. So I'll stop talking. Now you can see this area here. This is where the panels for the roof and the quarter skins were leaded together. This is actually leading back here, it's not filler. So you'll see a little bit of a discoloration in there. And you know, we know it's smooth enough. So we're just gonna keep going over that, but just be mindful if you see something like this, that's supposed to be there. When you had the primer over it, everything of course was the same color, but now we're getting into just little inconsistencies in the material. Now, I'm gonna go ahead likely and put one more coat of primer on top of this because I know I'll have a few low spots here and there. And our last coat before paint is gonna be a sealer. And that's gonna help with any of these other little very minor imperfections. Or you could go down to 600 and keep working this area if you wanted to. Just be mindful. If you do much more than the 400 on here, your surface is gonna start getting a little bit slick for the paint to adhere to. So be mindful of that. Just don't wanna wet sand that 1500 grit on your primer because the paint's not gonna stick to it very well. All right, well that's just gonna give you a very brief overview for blocking out this entire car. I'm gonna go ahead, turn you off, put a mask on, and get it done. All righty, well, I was a bad host and I actually sanded off the first round of filler off camera. I had forgot the GoPro inside and I wasn't gonna get this nice camera all covered in filler dust. So I went ahead, put a second coat on, should be able to clear up everything. Short of a final skim coat. So let's go ahead and just knock that down quickly. Alrighty, well that's gonna wrap up just kind of the big work with the DA right now. I did change my 60 grit disc halfway through. The other 100 grit A was worn out, and B, I wanted to see what the coarser disc did. Some of the other areas to knock down some of those high spots. Now remind you, we're not gonna be doing our final sanding with that. We're just coming in to knock down all the high and the rough spots from putting on the filler. And now I can come back with my blocks and do a much more detailed and careful sanding around the areas and contours, especially around those rear bumper areas, rear quarters where the tail lights are. This area, not so much of a big deal. Just hit it with the soft sander back and forth, X pattern, whatever, it'll get done. But these corners here have got nice tight contour. That's going to take more work than you can do with that big 6-inch disc. So yeah, a little more work to do there. Hit it with the skim coat. And of course, I have a lot of block sanding left to do on the roof and these the rear quarters. Remember from previous videos, the doors, those are already done, ready for a final block and seal, as well as the front fenders, the hood, and the trunk. Those, I believe, are also ready for a final coat of final blocking and then sealing. Those need another coat of primer on them yet. Yes, block, final primer, and then seal. And then in the next video, we're actually going to be putting paint down. So that's pretty exciting. We're not going to do the full car yet. I do have my last jar of sample that I had created, and I want to go ahead and just do some testing on the car in well, it won't be very conspicuous for long, but we are going to go ahead and get paint laid down on this car with the base and the clear to see how it looks and make sure it is the right color. I'm pretty certain it's going to be the right color because I'm tired of making samples. But I think that's the last step before we actually clean out the garage, get everything cleaned and dusted, blown off, floor wet down, and prep the car for final paint. So, until we come back with that next video, thank you for watching this one. If you are new, if you sat through this, thank you very much. Consider hitting the subscribe button below if you are interested in restorations like this. We've got some other restoration projects as well, but we're just kind of showcasing what your average guy can do at home in a garage. Sure, we've got a big shop that we built down the hill, but right now it's a dirt floor and unusable for 7 months of the year. More than that, probably 6 months of the year, it's kind of cold to work down there. So we're just getting by in the garage with common tools. We don't have a huge paint booth. We don't have a massive air compressor and dryer and vehicle lifts and everything else. Stuff any person can do at their own home. So thank you for watching, and we will catch you very soon in the next video. Bye-bye. I'm going to go back and sand a lot more.